In War Thunder Mobile, one of the most important things is to learn which tanks are the best to play. And since tech trees are out and the platoon system has been abolished, this just became even harder because, well, there is more choice. But lucky for you, you found this video, which I thank you for watching, by the way, which will explain what I believe are the best lineups for each tier. In this video, I will only be taking into account tanks that you can get through XP, so no collector tanks, no premium tanks, and no blueprint tanks. Let's get right into it. Now in tier 1 you get to choose your first T-34. Now you can't go wrong with a T-34. It's extremely well balanced when it comes to armor, mobility, and firepower. Every lineup I'm going to propose in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5 contain a T-34. This T-34 in particular is the T-34 1941. It's got a longer gun than the 1940 variant, which gives it a way higher muzzle velocity. That doesn't make sense to most of you probably, so let me just put it in simpler terms. The shell goes faster. That means it's easier to aim, is more likely to hit its target at long ranges, and has way more penetration power. Another thing that the T-34s have is 45mm of angled armor. That means that at lower tiers, many of the enemy's cannons cannot penetrate you. The T-34 carries very explosive shells, which means that when they penetrate, they deal devastating damage, which means that most of the time, you will one-shot enemies. This makes it easier for new players because they don't have to aim precisely. All they need to do is penetrate. Next up, we've got the German Panzer IV. Well, actually, two of them. I decided that the Panzer IVs were better than anything else except for the T-34 because nothing beats the Russian bias. The Panzer IV is one of the rare tanks that can actually have a chance at penetrating the T-34's lower glacis plate. It's not recommended, but if you need to, it's not a lost cause. Unfortunately, the shells are slightly less explosive than the T-34s, which means you won't always one-shot, but they are still filled with explosives, which means you don't have to aim too much. What it lacks in post-penetration damage, it gains in penetration. This is why I love the Panzer IVs so much. They have one of the greatest guns in tier 1, with a whopping 138mm of penetration. They can take on T-34s. Unfortunately, the armor is quite frankly terrible, so try not to get hit. Moving on to tier 2, let's start with the T-34. This time it's the upgraded 1942 version, which possesses a stronger turret. However, overall, the armor is slightly worse because it's the same armor as the tier 1 but at a higher tier, so if you find yourself in up tiers against tier 3s like the Sherman with the 76mm cannon, they might be able to penetrate your hull. I would still say that the overall survivability of the tank is better than the previous one because the turret's angles make it harder to penetrate and the hull is still fairly competent against most tanks. The more spacious turret also provides the crew with more space to reload, which means its reload time goes from 9 seconds on the 1941 version to 8.4 on the 1942 version. The gun is the same as on the 1941 version, the 76.2mm. Great post-penetration damage, but be careful where you aim, it doesn't always penetrate. Next up, we've got another Soviet beast, the KV-1S. This tank, similarly to the KV-1, has insane armor for its tier. It easily deflects most shots it can face, which makes it one of the most survivable vehicles at this tier, which for a new player is very important. The firepower is not too bad either. It has the same cannon as the T-34s, so you can expect very good post-penetration damage. Last but definitely not least, we have the T14. The T14 was probably the very first tank I got 10 kills in. Because it's not that it's got an amazing gun, it's pretty mid to be honest. Just like other American low tier vehicles. What makes it so special is the armor. Maybe even more armored than the Russian heavies. This thing is almost impenetrable to most tanks of its tier, except through this tiny hole where the machine gun is and the turret cheeks. Both these weak spots are easily protected if you move around by jiggling your tank. The gun is still quite decent. The post-penetration damage is good, but the penetration is questionable. For tier 3, I chose the Sherman with the 76mm cannon because I think it's a very decent weapon. Compared to the Russian 76mm cannon, this one has way more penetration and can easily go through any heavy tank of its tier, including the T1E1 and the KV1. It's also one of those tanks that balances armor, firepower and mobility extremely well, which makes it comparable to T-34s, but with a better cannon. The armor is slightly underwhelming, but can still bounce many lower caliber shots, and the mobility is very decent. Next up, we've got the KV1, the beast I mentioned earlier. Now, it possesses the F-34 cannon, which is the one that was mentioned in the T-34 tanks of tier 1 and tier 2 that I recommended. But in tier 3, it can be quite weak compared to other cannons, meaning you'll have to aim carefully if you want to penetrate heavier armored vehicles. However, what it lacks in firepower, it definitely compensates in armor. This tank is extremely hard to penetrate, and I'm not lying. The KV1 is considered to be one of the most overpowered vehicles of its tier just because of its armor, which means even newer players will be well protected and will not have to worry too much about the enemies. Finally, we have the T-34-57. The 57 in the name represents the size of the cannon. Now you might think, wait, it has a 57mm cannon. That's smaller than the previous cannons. How on earth can it be good? Well, this cannon is extremely long, which gives it an insane muzzle velocity compared to other vehicles. It makes it really easy to aim, pretty accurate, and the penetration is quite impressive. Overall, this tank has decent armor, decent mobility, and a decent cannon. The perfect medium tank. Look at this, it can even go through KV1s. Its only problem is since the cannon is smaller, the post-penetration damage is slightly decreased, so you will often need multiple shots to get the kill. If you want me to do tiers 4, 5 and 6 in the next video, make sure you leave a like. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.